What is the best prank you've ever pulled? In college, my roommates and I were friends with the girls across the hall. We did have a prank war. And this was our nuke. One night, we printed out a picture of the girl from The Exorcist and taped it to the outside of their window. We went back to our room and waited. We heard the scream through 3 sets of steel doors and our music. 5 seconds later, there was a knock at the door. And one of the girls crying at us that we were all assholes. One year for April Fools, my wife got me good. I got a letter in the mail from an attorney's office telling me that a girl I knew in high school was suing me for child support. I didn't remember having sex with her, but I did a lot of partying back in the day. So it was entirely possible I had and didn't remember. So now I'm freaking out, thinking I have a child I didn't know about. I call my parents. They're freaking out. They tell my grandparents. You see where this is going? I contacted an attorney for myself. Started planning out if I was going to file for custody. Making arrangements to fly home to try and meet my child. Finally, after my wife realizes it's getting out of hand, she confesses and we both laugh our asses off. Yeah, no. After I stood there in disbelief for about 5 minutes, I was shocked. Because I couldn't figure out how she had pulled it off. We didn't go to HS together and the girl I supposedly knocked up wasn't someone that anyone would have really known I was friends with. Not to mention that all the court documents looked 100% legit. Turns out she went through my yearbook and found a girl that had signed it. So she knew we would have been acquaintances. Then, she had her dad's attorney friend type up all the legal documents and have them notarized and signed at the courthouse. So yeah, she pretty much kicked my ass at April Fools. And I've spent the last 15 years plotting my revenge. I watched my target go insane at their desk. While they went to eat, I took a screenshot of their desktop. Of course, hiding their taskbar and moving their icons wasn't enough. I inverted their mouse and set new keybinds to their keyboard. I noticed on the front of their tower, they had a mini Ian wireless card that looked like a wireless mouse adapter. So I switched it with one and went back to my desk. They returned, sat down, and reached for their mouse. I knew what was about to unfold. They noticed right away that the mouse was off, followed by a what the? Trying to fix the mouse. They went to the taskbar, clicking anxiously. It never opened. So they did the hard shutdown of the computer. Once they got back in, they figured out that the time was the same as before and knew that something was off. They successfully figured out my plan and got to the mouse settings. But I wouldn't go down so easily. Right when they were about to click the apply button, I flicked my wireless mouse. This is when the night went from good to great. 20 minutes in, my flustered target began to crack. They tried again and again to click that apply button, but I wouldn't let them. Finally, devoured by frustration, my target gave in and screamed. Why would someone do this? Why me? Dot. I just giggled to myself. They left work early. I told my younger brother that if he continually drank water he would be able to pee continuously. He, of course, believed me and started guzzling water. That same morning he also decided to call into the radio station to win a prize or something, and eventually got through. Because of all the water he had been drinking he suddenly had to pee. Not realizing that the radio hosts would be able to hear him, he went to the bathroom to relieve himself. As soon as his stream started, the hosts asked what room he was in. To which he responded the bathroom, and they started laughing because they could clearly hear him peeing. They played that clip on their promo for weeks. I called my drunk friend pretending to be a girl he liked, whispering an order that he wouldn't catch on, giving some excuse. He's not the sharpest. Spoke all manner of filth, and encouraged him to visit her. I realize this sounds weird and rappy, but I know them both well and knew that nothing dodgy would happen. He texted me telling me how excited he was to be getting laid. I was in stitches. A couple of hours later I'm getting worried. He definitely went to her place. He was so keen. Anyway, I call him the next morning. He's in her bed. They actually did it. He'd got laid because of my prank. Result. WHN I was in high school. I got a key cut to my friend's car. So every NW and then I break in and rearrange house CDS. Put more garbage in. One time I cleaned it. Random harmless things. We stopped hanging out after high school. But I still carried the prank in for 3 years. Just told him the day. Laughed his ass off. It was a lazy Sunday morning. Chilling with the wife down in the rec room and she lets on she wants that second cup of coffee. I'm going up. I'll get it for you. Hun. So I go up to the kitchen. Pour her a big one and head back down with 2 mugs. She likes really big mugs. Just before stepping into the room, I set aside the full one and carefully make my way towards the couch all steeped in the aroma of coffee and acting as if it's a very full mug. Just as I am reaching out to hand it over, I pull off a really good fake stumble such that it looks like she is going to get the whole thing splat in her lap. You could say she was completely fooled. In retrospect, it was a little mean. I laughed but felt like a real sheet almost immediately. Not quite a prank. But when I was doing on the road training for my cell, I hit the biggest pothole ever on a state highway. And was pulling off to the side of the road and my trainer woke up and yelled what the FCK was that. I in my best fake terrified voice proclaimed that I think I had just killed someone. He jumped into the passenger's seat and told me to keep driving. Said we could be a few states away before we even needed fuel, etc. It was then that I realized dude had my back. This was so simple. But it was really funny. In college, we had a prank war with the guys across the hall. One early morning we went into their suite and put a pair of guy work boots with jeans down inside the bathroom stall. We stuffed the boots with newspaper for legs. If you walked into the bathroom it definitely looked like a guy was in there taking a shit. All day the boys had to find somewhere else to piss and shit. It wasn't until very late at night that they realized. All 6 of them were home when one went to use the bathroom. He came back in the room and realized no one was missing. They got all weirded out for a moment wondering who was shitting in their bathroom all day. It was fun to watch their reaction. Then the innocent prank war continued. Until their one douchebag roommate took it too far. Stupid drunk fucker thought that he could knock on our door and spray whoever answered with a fire extinguisher. Jackass didn't realize it would go ever fucking where. It was awful. We were cleaning white powder off of things for months. And finally got a new futon when we got sick of sitting down and having white dust fly out. We lived in a very small town where there was one convenience store. And it closed at midnight. Our high school classmate worked there. And would close the store. One night we jacked up the rear end of his pickup truck. And put blocks so that the tires were just barely touching the ground. We parked where we could see his truck and waited. He came out. Got in his truck and put it in drive. But the truck wouldn't go. Well, instead of looking under the truck and finding out it was just up on blocks, he slammed the door and walked home. We were laughing our asses off because he was so pissed off. The best part is that once he got far enough away, we took the truck back down off the blocks. I chuckle every time I think about it. Put a fake ad on Kijiji with a picture of a random car and my friend's cell phone number. Price was something ridiculous like $400 for a barely driven 2010 Focus or something. Whatever it was. It was a great deal. Well, he started getting calls from all over the province. At first he laughed it off. But eventually it started getting to him. He would open up to me about how depressing it was to get so many calls and none of them are your friends. Phone would ring in the middle of the night. Hundreds of text messages. Constantly deleting them. After about a month, he was driving to work. Got a call and threw his phone out of the window of his moving car. Went home and cancelled his cellular service. By this point I had forgotten about it. So I didn't think to tell him it was me until after he spent a few hundred on a new phone. He punched me in the face. But we laughed it off. Probably too late to get noticed. But once my family and I were going on a camping boating trip. I was driving one of the cars with my younger brother and my mom. With my brother in the seat behind me. During the whole 4 hours trip, people who were passing me kept giving me a little wave. At first I thought nothing of it. Just people being friendly. Till finally we were on I-80 in bum FCK nowhere Nebraska when a fire truck passes me on my left and all the firefighters inside give me a very friendly wave. I wave back of course and say out loud, "Why the FCK is everyone waving at me?" Double quote. At this point everyone in the car burst out laughing. Turns out my brother from the backseat was waving at everyone we passed and no one said anything to me. Might have been a you had to be there moment but we all still laugh about it to this day. This is probably lame by the standards of Reddit but I still get a chuckle out of it. My brother was in college and a couple of days before he was set to come home for Thanksgiving, we got a girl Pekingese. We already had a male Pekingese named Gizmo that my brother had picked out in the 7th grade. Somehow, my mom had forgotten to tell him. On the day of him coming home, I found out he didn't know. So as he was pulling into the driveway, I rushed and put Gizmo in a room so my brother wouldn't see him. When my brother opened the front door, the girl Peek runs to the door and starts barking furiously because of course this was some stranger invading her space. My brother starts flipping out and going, "Gizmo, what's wrong? Gizmo, it's me." He starts walking towards her and she starts growling and running away. He tries to follow her, still oblivious of the trick. My brother actually starts getting upset and asking my mom what happened to Gizmo and why does he hate him. Gizmo starts barking from the other room and my brother just has this look of WTF. He walks down the hallway and you just hear this joyous Gizmo. Good times were had by all. Both of our peaks were fixed. But the girl, Moxie, was around 7 at the time and Gizmo was this extremely grizzled 12-year-old with shorter hair, so it was funny that my brother thought Moxie was the same dog. Back in high school we had a teacher who was kind of old and losing his hearing. We put a half-broken doorbell above the ceiling tile above his desk. By broken I mean it was very quiet. The actual remote we brought into the classroom during class. Thought it would be funny to hear a doorbell in class. The thing we didn't know was it was already so quiet and barely heard through the tile. But you could still hear it. The teacher was losing his hearing so he couldn't hear it that well, but when he was at his desk we would ring it and he would kind of look around. Not sure if it was real or not. So eventually when he heard it he would look around the classroom looking for pranksters. So we kept the button in one of our socks and would click it with the other foot so he never saw anyone with the device in their hands. He also never mentioned it for the sake of not sounding crazy. So this continued for a year. We would take turns with the button. Whoever had his class would take it. My entire class knew about it and would try not to laugh when they heard it subtly go off. Then the bell finally died after a while. TLDR. Used a doorbell to make a teacher think he was going slightly crazy. My ex loved pro wrestling. I hated wrestling. He was also incredibly financially irresponsible, so when tickets went up for sale he was broke. I wound up agreeing to pay for the tickets to a wrestling event about an hour away from our home. Day of the event he pissed me off. I forget what he did but it was really stupid and careless. I think he had forgot to pay our phone bill and it got cut off. He always did stupid shit like that. So right before we were supposed to leave I had the tickets in my purse but he didn't know that. The tickets had been in the top drawer of our dresser. He had just taken out the garbage and he went to get the tickets out of the dresser drawer but they weren't there. I managed to convince him that I was so mad that I threw the tickets in the garbage. So here he is, freaking out, digging through the dumpster to find our garbage bag with the tickets in it. I let him dig for a little while then told him I still went to that stupid wrestling event and the ticket dumpster diving made it enjoyable. It was the dead of winter. I lived in a house with 7 other dudes. The power had gone out for days due to a storm and everyone was out of the house but me. The house had no central heating and no fireplace, so we were all camped out in the living room that week. I was expecting my best friend home from work, so with the house empty I curled up in a sleeping bag and closed my eyes. I put the corner of the sleeping bag over my face. When my friend got home he called out for me and then found me laying there. He tried waking me up. First calling out then shaking me. Finally he pulled the sleeping bag from my face to reveal one eye left peeled open. He nearly sheet himself thinking I had froze to death. Lol. In high school I was late to a gathering, so my friend egged my car. After assuring him that I was in the wrong and he was right to do so, I waited a week. He had a hippie van from the 70s that he lived in from time to time because he really liked weed. This van has a panel or two loose, as those vans most often do. So I went to the store and bought a whole dead fish. Frozen. Broke into his car and hid the fish in a place I knew he would never look. I waited 3 weeks, and when he did come to school he would say things like, "My car kinda smells, guys, my stoner friends won't smoke in my van anymore cause it smells like vagina." His word, not mine. He actually referred to vaginas this way, and though they smelled like fish just naturally. So one day someone asks him about him egging my car some time ago, and he assured them that I had conceded, claiming I was in the wrong. The dude asked him if he was sure about that, and that is when something clicked inside of the bastard. He called me up since he hadn't been to school in forever. "Jackasha, wanna tell me why my car smells like vagina? Where did you hid it, you son of a bitch?" And then I lost my shit, came clean, and told him never egg my car or damage my property ever again. He cursed me because he had been living in that jalopy because his parents refused to let him smoke in his basement. When I lived in New York City, I called a friend and it went to voicemail. I don't know where it came from, but I said, "Hey, hope you're okay. Just saw the news. Bear attack in Queens. Stay safe." Double quote. I hung up, then proceeded to call all of our mutual. If he asks you about a bear attack, just go along with it. A few months later I finally caught up with him. "Did they ever catch that bear?" Double quote. He says no. Then turns to the group he is with and explains there was a bear attack in broad daylight, etc. I start laughing and confess I made it up. Apparently he was telling everybody and was trying to convince people it actually happened. My roommate freshman year in college was a good guy, but he used to piss me off occasionally. He had left a bit of weed in his drawer, so after Columbus Day weekend I got back to campus before him and decided to mess with him. I switched doors with our hallmates so that when my roommate got back he wouldn't be able to punch in the passcode to open the door. I then wrote up a fake letter from the dean on campus letterhead my buddy had managed to find, saying that campus police had raided the room and found his weed and that he was facing expulsion. We left my buddy's phone number to call to set up a disciplinary hearing. No one expected that his first call would be to his mom, in tears, to tell her what happened. I still feel badly about that, but we got him pretty good. For most of 1999 my dad bought into all the hype about the Y2K bug and believed all the computers were going to shut down. And it was going to be mass chaos, doom and gloom, etc. So he went a little nuts hoarding food and supplies. And at one point was considering a bomb shelter. So 16-year-old me was pissed off that he would not let me celebrate New Year's with my friends, because the whole family had to stay home to be safe for Y2K. To get back at him, my brother, sister and I planned to man all of the light switches and TV so that we could simultaneously turn everything off at the end of Doc Clark's midnight countdown. It totally worked. He just sat there, darkness in his chair with this panicked look on his face. We could barely contain ourselves. So the lights came back on pretty fast. My mom thought it was hysterical. And my dad actually admitted that he was wrong about Y2K and that we had gotten him pretty good. This one time I played the funniest prank on my friend James. When we were walking down the street, I held his hand and he said, "What the FCK, bro? That's gay." And then I kissed him on the lips. You should have seen his face, oh my god, haha. He must have been so embarrassed. He kissed me back. But wait, this prank gets better. Then I sucked him off behind a dumpster. It was the funniest prank I've ever done. I love playing pranks on my friends, haha, good times. So near the end of my senior year, one of my good friends did an amazing April Fool's Day prank on my woodshop teacher. Bit of backstory, my friend had taken woodshop for 4 years, so he knew the teacher really well. So on the morning of the 1st of April, He goes in before school and asks to use a saw to make a different friend some canvas frames for art class. The teacher just nods and says no problem. So he sets up at the chop saw right in front of the teacher's office. When he reaches down to grab his stock wood, however, he also grabs a paper mache hat he had made the night before and filled with a plastic bag of fake blood. He hides the fake hand in his sleeve, says the teacher's name, and brings the saw down on the fake hand. Blood sprays everywhere. The teacher freaked and dragged him to his car to take him to the hospital. When he pauses and says, "Wait, look. Dot," and hold up the fake hand. He was suspended for a while, but it was great. I was in on a prank one of my mates played on our friend. So my friend JJ received quite a few phone calls one day asking to book a taxi a few weeks ago. He just answered them all saying sorry he was fully booked up as it was the quickest way he could get rid of the callers. The next day he got more and more. And the following day it was pretty much non-stop as it was Halloween night. So that night we were at a house party when Zed came up to JJ and says he has a present for him. He opens his wallet and pulls out a business card for a company called JJ's Taxis. His reaction was priceless. Zed had bought 250 of these cards and put them through all the letterboxes of the student village we live in. JJ still receives a few calls a day. A wireless doorbell placed in the ceiling of another teacher's classroom. It was a cheap Chinese design with several ringtones. We kept turning up the volume and changing the sound weekly. We would walk by and ring it while he was teaching class. He kept not finding it. We started requesting songs on the announcements that might tip him off. Ring my bell. My doorbell. Finally, we set it to play the Yellow Rose of Texas and requested Yellow Rose of Texas on the announcements. We also moved it to corner of the room. After 6 weeks of all this, he finally found it. A roommate of mine had a serious problem with coffee. The dude would chug the stuff all day. He worked from home, and at any given moment you could hear a pot of coffee brewing. Anyway, he always stocked up on like 4 cans at once. Well, I bought some decaf. He'd crack open a fresh can and as soon as he wasn't paying attention, I'd dump it in a Ziploc and replace it with the decaf. He actually started going through withdrawals after about a day of this. He turned into a raging asshole too, and didn't realize why. It was incredibly hard for me to contain my laughter. After about a week of this, he found my bags of his real coffee stuffed down in the bottom of our chest freezer. He went absolute fucking ballistic. I've never seen someone so mad. I legitimately thought he was going to beat the shit out of me, then move out. He calmed down after a few days, but would get pissed every time it was brought up. If we were out drinking with friends, I'd suggest one of them mention the prank just to watch him chew into them. I bought a scary witch's Halloween mask, put a volleyball in it, then tied it to a rope. I then threw it over the roof of my house and lined it up with the second-story master bedroom bathroom window. Then I waited. At about 2 AM my wife got up to use the bathroom. I heard her shriek in horror a moment after she flicked on the bathroom light. She scurried out of the bathroom and fell into the tub screaming. I went to her and asked what was wrong. She said there was a horrible face in the window. I told her I'd check and peeked into the room. Then shook my head and said, "Nope. Nothing there." She got up and went to check for herself. As soon as she saw the face again I screamed boo at her. Spent a couple days on the couch and no sex for a month. But it was worth it. When I was around 8 years old I had a best friend of my age whose parents were separated. One summer her dad invited us both to her holiday house outside the city for a week, which was super nice and a lot of fun. But what we hadn't realized back then is that his new girlfriend, who was a total bitch, was also coming along. So one sunny morning at breakfast, we decided that it was time for a little bit of toughening up for her, since she would cut every trip short because of a minor personal inconvenience or a broken nail, etc. This was when I told her to close her eyes, because we had a pleasant surprise waiting for her, and we put mayo onto her forearms. She shrieked and asked what we were doing. We told her she should try our new sunscreen and she started rubbing her arms with mayo. It was hilarious for us, but not so much for her when she also started rubbing her face and putting one and one together. Oh god. I actually feel kinda bad for this. Back in high school we used to always bring computer discs to school to play in the computer room at school. I had an Apple at home and there were nothing but apples at school, so all I did was make copies for anyone that wanted to play a game and they would give me like $3-5 a game. So the computer room was pretty full by the time this happened. One day this retarded kid comes in and wants to play, so I give him a game to play. He sat opposite of me. As all the computers faced away from each other's in rows with the power cords all going to the middle of two tables. I switched the monitors of mine and the one right across from me, which was right next to his computer. I knew a little basic back then, so I made the screen flash to get his attention. Then I just started typing stuff and like the computer was talking to him. He tried to type at first but was so slow I just told him I could hear him when he talked. I fucked with him for like 15 minutes and ended up getting him so mad he was screaming into the disk drives that he was going to beat the computer's ass because it didn't have no arms. The kid ended up getting kicked out of the computer room during lunch for causing such a scene. I still feel kinda bad about it.